Hi there, everyone. It's Russell. Welcome to the Reading Fabricator, and it has been a long time. It's been over 100 days since I last posted anything, and in truth, I just needed to have a bit of a rest period. You know, a lot going on with work and with school, so I just had not been reading actually. And every year or so, this sort of thing happens where I'll take 2 to 3 months off. But this was a particularly long period of time, so any of those people out there who like my videos, I'm sorry that it's taken me so long to get to this, but yeah, I'm back, and I'm back to reading, and I've read 2 books already this week, so I'm looking forward to posting about those. But I figured this was quite a timely one, given the sad passing of one Cormac McCarthy. I reread The Road, basically. It's one of the first books of his that I ever read about 6, 7 years ago, and made quite an impact on me the first time I read it. You know, following this trajectory of going from The Road to like Blood Meridian, then Suttree, then All the Pretty Horses, and then No Country for Old Men, and so on and so forth. I was just blown away by his writing style, and he's certainly one that will be missed. To my mind, a month ago, I considered him the greatest living American author. Can't say that anymore, but he's definitely one of the greatest American authors of all time. I can confirm that based on my own personal opinion. As for The Road, it's quite fascinating because I've reread 4 books by him in the last year now. Child of God, All the Pretty Horses, No Country for Old Men, and now, The Road. And all those rereads, I appreciate more the second time I've read them than I did the first time, and will most likely appreciate them even more when I reread them again in the future. And The Road is no exception. It's fantastically well written. There are certain passages in this book which absolutely haunted me, and the writing, it's almost as if it's like a fable, like a modern day fable, a horror fable of a world that could potentially happen. And that's the most scariest thing. I mean, some people refer to this as one of the scariest books ever written, despite the fact that it's, I guess, not really a horror, although some people would say it borders on the horror genre purely because of how realistic it depicts the environment. But there were so many sections in this book, and I bought it on the Kindle, even though I have it on physical. I bought it on the Kindle so I could read it at work. In the first 100 pages alone, I think I highlighted about 18 passages, and I just had to stop because there'd be too much to read out. But there were so many passages that really stuck out to me this time. There are so many bits in this book, not to do with the plot, but just little events that happen, like sidelined to the plot itself, about the descriptions of the climate, of the topography, of just every little thing that is described around the titular 2 characters, the man and the boy, that it's so well articulated that they're amongst the greatest writing I've seen this century, guaranteed. Yeah, I used to think No Country for Old Men was the better book of the 2, but I'm having my doubts now. I really am. The Road is the book that won the Pulitzer Prize, and some would argue that right prize, but right prize, right author, wrong book. Like, some people think that he should have been awarded it years ago for Blood Meridian or even Suttree. I mean, personally, I think Suttree is his best book, but Blood Meridian is still technically his best book. As for The Road, you know, a father and a son who are basically just traveling south through a decimated America. And it's never explained as to what actually happens. There is a little paragraph that you get, and that is it. The clock stopped at 1:17, a long sheer of light, and then a series of low concussions. He got up and went to the window. "What is it?" she said. He didn't answer. He went into the bathroom and threw the light switch, but the power was already gone. A dull rose glow in the window glass. That is all you get. That is the only reference to what causes this post-apocalyptic apocalypse. And I've seen many theories being thrown out there, like it's a volcano, asteroid collision, nuclear war. People seem to tend to go towards the nuclear war thing, although many years ago I read this interview with a guy who worked at the Santa Fe Institute, and who one day Cormac McCarthy went in there and asked him to describe basically what happened to the Earth after the asteroid hit around the time that the dinosaurs became extinct. And he went into great detail about it. He was apparently Cormac was very interested in this event, and when the scientist that Cormac spoke to, actually read The Road a year later, to his mind, he thought that this book was an asteroid collision because it sounded to him just as he was explaining to Cormac what would happen to the Earth. So that leads me to think that it was maybe an asteroid collision, although many people would say it's a nuclear war. But that doesn't really matter. That plays no part in this book whatsoever. The book is not interested in telling you what it is, because it's not about that. It's about the love of a father and a son in a world where humanity is no longer tolerated, no longer exists, where humanity is the worst thing out there, even though there are so few of them. And there are moments throughout this book where they have titular encounters with various people, most of them bad, some good, and some who are just merely trying to survive without actually hurting the man and the child. And I was struck by one particular encounter, which was the very first time they see someone on this road. And it was after a night of thunderstorms, of severe thunderstorms and lightning. And they're walking down the road, and this man is ahead of them, and he's just stumbling. And they walk past him, and they come to the realization that this man that had been struck by lightning, he's just burning. His flesh is searing. There is smoke coming off his body. Very graphically described, as is all Cormac McCarthy work. And when I first read the book, that just glossed past me. I did not think about it. This being the first person that you encounter following these two people on the road, it really left quite a mark on me. And the descriptions of everything that happens since then, before then, there's too many to name. It's immaculate stuff. I mean, the very first page itself is just so beautifully described. When he woke in the woods in the dark and the cold of the night, he'd reach out to touch the child sleeping beside him. Nights dark beyond darkness, and the days more grey each one than what had gone before. Like the onset of some cold glaucoma dimming away the world, his hand rose and fell softly with each precious breath. He pushed away the plastic tarpaulin and raised himself in the stinking robes and blankets and looked toward the east for any light, but there was none. In the dream from which he'd awakened, he had wandered in a cave where the child led him by the hand, their light playing over the wet flowstone walls, like pilgrims in a fable, swallowed up and lost among the inward parts of some granitic beast, deep stone flues where the water dripped and sang, tolling in the silence the minutes of the earth and the hours and the days and of the years without cease, until they stood in a great stone room where lay a black and ancient lake, and on the far shore a creature that raised its dripping mouth from the rimmed stone pool and stared into the light with eyes dead white and sightless as the eggs of spiders. It swung its head low over the water as if to take the scent of what it could not see, crouching there pale and naked and translucent, its alabaster bones cast up in shadow on the rocks behind it, its bowels, its beating heart, the brain that pulsed in a dull glass bell. It swung its head from side to side and then gave out a low moan and turned and lurched away and loped soundlessly into the dark. I mean, holy shit. That's the first page, and I was completely taken away. When I reread this book and reread that first page, I was having panic attacks. I was like, I used to have the road ranked so low on Cormac McCarthy's list. I mean, I used to have it ranked like around the 9th or 8th in the tier ranking, even though Cormac McCarthy has not written a bad book in my mind, even though some of them are a bit mixed reception. But there are so many passages in the road that only a master could conjure, that many authors out there, many writers out there would look to them and drool, wishing they could come up with stuff like this. But here's the thing: as great as the writing is, I think the reason why plenty of McCarthy files or people who love his work out there rank it, I guess, so low, would have to be just because of the plot. Because technically there isn't much of a plot; it's just a father and a son walking south trying to survive. But as I said before, I view it as a fable. It's just a fable with morality at the center of it, and just trying to find the good in the dark and the bleakness. And this is probably the bleakest book I've ever read. It has to be the bleakest book I've ever read. But it's the bleakest book with the brightest ending, I think. I truly do think that. I think the ending leaves hope for a restored humanity to become. And when I finished the book, I'll admit I was a bit emotional, and I think most people were when they read it. But now reading it, and I've got a younger brother, and he was about the same age as the kid in the book when I first read it, and it didn't struck me then, but it struck me now. I was like, what would happen if I was in that situation with him? And I can only imagine how worse it would be for a father with a kid of the same age reading this thing. This book would just destroy you. I know it would. If I had a child, a son or a daughter of that same age, and I was reading this book, I'd probably never touch it again. I think this book would just ruin me. And I think that talks to the power of the writing, the structure that it's written in, how a lot of it is just passages followed by just quick, simple, non-difficult dialogue between the man and the boy, of which Cormac McCarthy himself has stated that a lot of that is based on conversations he had with his then 6-year-old son, John Francis. And it shows that Cormac, despite all his nihilism and pessimism in his works, he is a man of love. He does indeed love his son, and with this book, which was dedicated to his son, he was able to show that he cares for this boy deeply. And there's moments like that peppered throughout. In particular moments where they're talking about dreams. There's a lot of dream sequences in this book, and a lot of talks about God and of carrying the fire, which is a quite a big motif which plays out in the end as well. I'm just going to rattle off some of the passages I've highlighted in the first 100 pages of this book because I think they all deserve particular attention. The blackness he woke to on those nights was sightless and impenetrable, a blackness to hurt your eyes with listening. Often he had to get up, no sound but the wind in the bare and blackened trees. He rose and stood tottering in that cold autistic dark, with his arms outheld for balance, while the vestibular calculations in his skull cranked out their reckonings. An old chronicle, to seek out the upright, no fall but preceded by a declination. He took great marching steps into the nothingness, counting them against his return, eyes closed, arms oaring, upright to what? Something nameless in the night, lode or matrix, to which he and the stars were common satellite, like the great pendulum in its rotunda, scribing through the long day movements of the universe of which you may say it knows nothing, and yet know it must. Dark of the invisible moon, the nights now only slightly less black. By day the banished sun circles the earth like a grieving mother with lamp. That's probably my favourite sentence in the whole book. That really struck me. I don't know why, but that hit me hard. They stood on the far shore of a river and called to him, tattered gods slouching in their rags across the waste, trekking the dried floor of a mineral sea where it lay cracked and broken like a fallen plate. Paths of feral fire in the coagulate sands, the figures faded in the distance. He woke and lay in the dark. With these passages that I've read to you, there's no $1,000 words. I mean, there are some decent big words in there, but he purposely chooses the right number of words per sentence to just get everything across to you, to give you the meaning, to get you thinking. There are wonderful, wonderful passages there, which I honestly had to put down this Kindle, I guess, but also the book as well, if I have it here, to put it down and just walk outside and think. And that's what I love about literature. There are certain authors out there where I can read certain passages by them and just I can only read a certain amount because I have to put it down and process what I've read. There are certain books out there where I've had to download podcasts, watch YouTube videos in order to help me process what I've read, to be able to understand it more, to be able to learn from it, to make myself a better reader. There's only a few authors out there that can do that. I'm thinking of like Thomas Pynchon or Don DeLillo. Philip Roth, I've read a few bits by him, but I've never actually completed a book by him, but I'm hoping to. But those three, and Cormac McCarthy, who I think it was Harold Bloom referred to as the four great American novelists of his time. No other authors really come to mind. There's plenty of books that I've read out there in the past year, written by quite popular mainstream authors, and they are good writers, but they are not on the same level as this. They cannot conceive writing. They cannot put it to paper the way this is written. This is like something you'd find in an old dusty book that was written 500 years ago, hiding in a cave. It was written by someone who, it's as though they had lived 1,000 lifetimes and had witnessed everything. It's obvious that Cormac McCarthy, he inhaled information, he absorbed it. He would hang out at the Santa Fe Institute for the remainder of his life, starting in the early 2000s, just to be with scientists. When they had these annual get-togethers at these awards, he would purposely ignore the writers and go to the scientists because he just wanted to learn. And it shows. It shows, particularly in the final two books of his, The Passenger and Stella Maris, which I think got an unfair mixed reception. I actually think they're both great books. Personally, I think Stella Maris is the better of the two, but The Passenger is by no means a bad book. It's really good. Put together, it would have been a masterpiece. So yeah, I stand by my feelings about those two books there, of which Stella Maris might be even more emotional than this one. I don't know. I'll have to wait until I reread it again to find out. But I'm completely enamored with what's going on in The Road here. It was probably the first Cormac McCarthy book I've read. I think it might have been, and I forgot about it. I forgot about everything. All I knew was the basics of the story and the final paragraph, which I maintain is probably the greatest thing he's ever written. But I knew nothing of what happened of the events in between, where I'll be reading 25 pages. My goal usually is to read 25 pages, go do something, then read another 25 pages over the course of a week. But I was reading like 100 pages a day on the road because I just wanted it to continue. I wanted to see where these two characters would end up. And even though I already knew the ending, I wanted to see them survive, which made it all the more heartbreaking, at least for one of the characters. And I'm shocked at how much I love this book. Out of all the rereads, I think The Road might take top spot by quite a large margin, even though from a philosophical standpoint, No Country for Old Men might be the better book. I don't know. I'll leave that up to you to decide. That's just my personal opinion. What was so great to me was that even though there were passages where it was beginning to get into a bit of a lull, where you're just seeing the same thing happen over and again, he will bring in a new event, a different event every time, and it'll pick the pace right back up, and your heart starts to beat faster, and you want to see what happens to them. I'm thinking of the time quite early on in the book where they go to a house. And I preface this by saying, if you haven't read the book, then by all means stop this video and go do it, because I'm gonna drop a few spoilers, even though they are potential important plot pieces. I don't think they'll detract away from the story, but in any way, shape, or form. But for those that haven't read it, this will be spoilers territory. So continue knowing that you've been warned. They go to a house and they find a locked door that's going into the basement. The boy doesn't want him to go down there, but he has to look because they're starving. They haven't eaten in days. And what he finds down there is so horrifying. It's basically, just all these completely disheveled humans, men and women, some of whom have had their legs cut off all the way up to the stump, all the way up to the waist, and are blackened out, which basically means that cannibals are living there and are eating these humans. And it's the way he has written it, the way he builds up the tension to this moment. I've not read it anywhere else. It took me by surprise. Honestly, I don't remember anything about that part of the book. And when I read it, honestly, my heart was beating. It brought me into it. Seeing them escape, seeing them hide in the bushes, watching the house over the nighttime, hearing these prisoners screaming, being killed to be eaten by cannibals. Other moments that do that, where they're walking through a town towards the end of the book, and a man in a window shoots an arrow into his leg. I mean, it just shows just how degraded humanity has become, how they basically most have turned to animals. Anyway, to form a will to survive. Most don't remember the time before the event. They've forgotten it. Now they're just going day and day at a time. They don't care if they die. They don't care if they die, but they'll do anything to survive. And that's why I think this is probably the most realistic depiction of a post-apocalyptic environment that I've ever read or even seen on the screen. I've not actually watched the John Hillcoat movie The Road, out of fear that they'll do the book wrong, so maybe I should give that a shot. John Hillcoat also directed another Western, an Australian Western called The Proposition, which was actually quite well received. It's a brutal book. It's a brutal movie, very grisly and disturbing. And I'm pretty sure that's the reason why they've also hired him to adapt Blood Meridian, or whether or not he's actually going to get it done, I don't know. But if you're a fan of The Road, of the movie The Road, and of John Hillcoat's directing of The Road, go check out his Australian movie The Proposition, because I think you might like it. I think it might give you hope with what he has, with ideas in terms of adapting Blood Meridian. Getting back to The Road, we have all these moments where you just see just horror after horror that you want it to pick up. You want them to be happy for one moment, and it happens. About the midway point, they find this little bunker hidden in the grass with all these supplies, enough to keep them going for weeks on end. And there's like a 20-page section where they are happy, where they're enjoying life, and it's a beautiful moment. It might be my favorite portion of the book in the whole novel. Just seeing them actually get ahead for once. Obviously, it doesn't pan out quite well because things happen to them after they leave the bunker, but it's just little moments like that that just give you hope, bring light into this otherwise dark world where every sentence describes ash and grey and darkness, where every living thing is dead. And it makes you think, it really does. I'm going to end this by basically reading the final passage of the novel. It's no spoiler because it has nothing to do with the book. But when I heard of Cormac McCarthy's passing a few weeks ago, I did not think of the movie adaptations. I did not think of his Oprah interview. I did not think of Blood Meridian or Sutri or All the Pretty Horses or his final 2 books that were released. No, what I thought of was the very last page of The Road. Because even though I don't remember the story of The Road, I remembered very little of it. I remembered this passage, and when he passed, my mind just instantly went to this. I don't know why, but I think it might be the greatest passage he's ever written. It's so mystical and really, really gets under your skin. Once there were brook trout in the streams in the mountains. You could see them standing in the amber current where the white edges of their fins wimbled slothfully in the flow. They smelled of moss in your hand, polished and muscular and torsional. On their backs were vermiculate patterns that were but maps of the world and its becoming, maps and mazes of a thing which could not be put back, not be made right again. In the deep glens where they lived, all things were older than man, and they hummed of mystery. Now, had he not published The Passenger and Stella Maris, the road probably would have been the best, the perfect way for him to end, because that would have been the final passage in his bibliography, and what a passage to go out on. It's got a mythological quality to it, and I know McCarthy likes to deal in realism, but I adhere to this. This to me is perfect writing, and maybe you adhere to it too. I want to know your opinions. What do you think of the road? Because I know a lot of people out there have it sort of in the mid-tier ranking when it comes to Cormac books. I still do, although I think it's bumped up a few more. I think it's bumped up to like 5th or 6th. I still think quite highly of Stella Maris, Sartre, Blood Meridian, and No Country for Old Men. But the road has completely shaken me to my very soul. It has hit me emotionally. And I never thought that the final 3 books in McCarthy's bibliography would be his most emotional. Maybe it was just the old age getting to him. I'm not sure. I still adhere to his writing. I still research him excruciatingly. And I will still refer to him as one of the greatest writers to have ever lived in the last 150 years. I was very sad to see him go. I knew his time was coming. I mean, the guy was almost 90, so it was bound to happen, but I always had this feeling that the man was unkillable, that he was immortal, that he was in some way a good version of the Judge Holden, that someone who would live forever and just absorb information and dish it out to the unlearned. Yeah, there's not much more that can be said. Again, sorry it's taken so long for me to publish a video. I just had to take some time off to rest, but I'm glad to be back again, and what a way to kickstart it. The Road is a great read and is highly recommended on my part. Thank you for watching. All the best to you.